This video will begin my discussion of the moral argument. Now, of course, there are multiple different versions of the moral argument that differ in inanity, and they differ in how best to approach them in terms of both understanding understanding what's wrong with them. The first moral argument is, of course, Hitler. Yeah, it really is that straightforward. It's the way the argument goes is Hitler was an atheist, therefore atheism is bad, therefore Christianity is good. Now, what's interesting about this is the fact that most people go after this argument, and it is an argument. It actually is, believe it or not. It's just that a few of the premises are assumed because they're crazy. Now, most people go after this argument by saying, well, Hitler was an atheist. Probably not. In all likelihood, he was Christian, although it's debatable whether he was Christian or whether he was some weird mix of Christian with with certain type of neo-paganism, which neither of which are atheism, and he most certainly was an atheist. Atheists were some of the first people that were sent to the camps. Hence, it's pretty clear, hence, it's safe to say he wasn't an atheist. But however, while this is the traditional response to this argument, it isn't the best one. For the simple reason that it requires knowledge outside of the argument itself. Something that really isn't necessary with a logically fallacious argument, such as this one. You see, while the only premises you hear in the Hitler moral argument, is Hitler was an atheist, premise 1. Hitler was bad, premise 2. Therefore, atheism is bad, tertiary conclusion, and sort of premise 3. Therefore, Christianity is good, premise 4, tertiary conclusion 2, premise 4. Therefore, Christianity is true. Actually, that last one, the final conclusion, isn't even traditionally in the Hitler moral argument. It's missing that. It doesn't state its actual conclusion, because its actual conclusion clearly doesn't fall from its premises. It's just there, so it's assumed. Because the only people who are going to assume it are people who already think Christianity is true. Now, the premises that are skipped, in addition to the conclusion, are, of course, that when something is bad, that means it's wrong. That's not true. It also skips the premise. Now, add in that premise, Hitler was an atheist. Atheism is bad. Bad things are not true. Therefore, atheism is not true. That doesn't really make sense, for the simple reason that truth value and goodness value are completely independent of each other. It's true that Hitler killed 15 million people as part of the Holocaust. I'm ignoring all the other deaths in World War II, all the other deaths caused by Germans in World War II, around 8 million of which were European Jews. That's true. It's not good. I would in fact say it has a positive truth value. Yet I would say that it was probably the most immoral action ever done. Now, this is a simple issue. Now, this is a point that is easy to make, that most people don't make, because they're not thinking about the Hitler moral argument as a formal logical argument. They're not thinking of the assumed premises. And to me, it's important when dealing with religious apologetics arguments to deal with the assumed premises, to think of them as logic-based arguments, because while they are illogical, they are arguments. Now, going past that first assumed premise that something being wrong means it's not true, there's another assumed premise, which of course is two more assumed premises. Atheism is wrong, therefore God exists. That's accurate. It actually is a valid premise. If it's not true that no gods exist, then it must be true that some gods exist. That's an accurate premise. I would point out that the argument's already failed before we got to this point, but that is an accurate premise. What's the next premise? The next assumed skip premise. God is true. God is real. Therefore, Christianity is true. I say Christianity. I presume that apologists from other religions could do the same thing for the simple reason that the logical jump from God is real to my specific God is real is a big one. And it's one where the conclusion does not follow from the premise. The fact of the matter is there are thousands of gods that humanity has come up with over time, and virtually countless vague deistic concepts of God, where if atheism weren't true, if there were gods, would be possible. Would presume would be possible. It only all that some type of God exists means is that one of them must be true. Doesn't mean Christianity must be true. That's something that's very common in apologetics arguments, where they act as though every single religion other than theirs and every single concept of God other than theirs doesn't exist, doesn't count, should really just be discarded. This is because, once again, apologetics isn't honest. Apologetics isn't trying to find an answer. The only purpose of apologetics is to make the people who already agree with the apologist go, he's right. That's the only thing they exist for. Now, taking that into account, what I love, and I do love, about the Hitler moral argument is that it's so clearly based purely on emotion. It's meant to make you go, Hitler, bad. Therefore, whatever's being connected to Hitler, bad. It's not only seen in apologetics. For example, the American right-wing libertarians like comparing the New Deal to Hitler because they're idiots. Let's be honest, most of them aren't idiots. They're just crazy people who are trying to get idiots to like them. But that of course goes into the basic idea of any Hitler argument of Godwin's law in general, which my series is not really about. Therefore, in my next video, I will be moving on to the next moral argument.